All right. Hello and welcome to the Women's Fund's very first virtual Lunch and Learn. I'm Jennifer Long, Grants Chair of the Women's Fund, which is a signature program of the Austin Community Foundation. Founded in 2004, the Women's Fund is a giving network dedicated to improving life for Central Texas women and their families. Many of us come to this work because we know that gender matters. Investing in a woman has a proven ripple effect, benefiting not just herself and her family, but her greater community. But we also know that the intersectionality of race and gender also matters. This pandemic has highlighted the overlapping systems of oppression and inequity that women of color face on a daily basis. As a result, women of color are being disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, as they are more likely to live in poverty, are overrepresented in industries experiencing job loss, and less likely to be insured. Our investors have responded to these needs by giving. Thanks to the generosity of this community of givers, you have helped us raise vital dollars for our grant making. Thank you for giving your time and your financial support to the Women's Fund. The Women's Fund is also data-driven and community-led, and to that end, we invest our grant making in the building blocks of economic security: housing, childcare, preventing unintended pregnancy, and the focus of today's discussion, education, specifically how women can build a path to post-secondary success and participation in the workforce. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated these barriers, to say the least. We know that women are already facing economic insecurity, and they are being disproportionately impacted by the health crisis. So our investment in these strategies is more important now than ever before. And that's why in April, the Women's Fund awarded $400,000 to 16 deserving nonprofits. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we dedicated $100,000 of additional funds to this grant cycle, allowing us to triple the number of nonprofits we originally planned on supporting. We also accelerated our grants review timelines so we could get dollars out the door and support frontline workers as quickly as possible. And a special thank you to the grants committee members who worked hard to make this happen. In addition, we also provided more flexible capital in the form of general operating support to allow agencies to meet unanticipated needs. Now more than ever, it is important for us to work together to support women's economic security. We know that we can do more when we do it together. So on behalf of the Women's Fund, please know how grateful we are for those committed to helping our community's most vulnerable populations. The anticipated economic and health impacts of COVID-19 are likely to be long-lasting, and this work is more critical than it's ever been. It's also critical that we continue to understand community needs, and to that end, thank you for joining us for our very first Lunch and Learn. We are eager to better understand how the pandemic has impacted women's abilities to continue their education and career training. At the Foundation, we love to use mealtime as an opportunity to discuss community issues, so I hope you have something tasty in front of you as we dive into discussing a pretty big topic, post-secondary success. But before we do that, I want to quickly go over a few housekeeping items and review today's agenda. First, I encourage you to adjust your settings in the drop-down menu to view who's talking to best view today's panel discussion. Second, we are taking questions via the questions box on GoToWebinar. Everyone is muted, so this is the best way to submit any questions you may have for the Q&A later. But you don't have to wait until the end to submit your questions. As you have questions, please go ahead and enter them into the questions box. We'll save some time at the end to make sure that your questions are answered. And at that time, Kim Theodore-Seide, Program Manager for the Women's Fund at the Austin Community Foundation, is going to join us to facilitate the Q&A. And I think that's all the housekeeping items, so we're ready to jump in. I am excited that today we'll be talking with community leaders and partners from across the Austin Community Foundation's full portfolio of grantees. These are folks that work constantly to make sure that everyone has access to post-secondary training and degrees that will lead to greater economic security, and for that, we thank you. I'm looking forward to us all learning more and discovering ways that we can help. And so, I am delighted to introduce you to the Foundation's grant partners and community leaders joining us on today's panel. First, Dr. Ericka Jones joins us from Huston-Tillotson University, where she is the Dean of Student Affairs and oversees various student support areas for the university. To this role, Dr. Jones brings her knowledge of student success strategies to design, implement, and assess student needs within higher education. She holds a doctorate in education from Concordia University in curriculum and instruction. Thank you for being here, Dr. Jones.
Thank you for having me.
Next, Marisela Montoya is Director of Education for Foundation Communities, the Women's Fund's most recent $50,000 education grant partner. At Foundation Communities, she oversees all learning centers in the Austin and Dallas regions, which serve both adults and children. Marisela has also worked for Austin ISD and holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Texas. Thank you for joining us, Marisela.
Thanks for having me.
And Stephen Christopher is Associate Vice President of Student Accessibility and Social Support Resources at Austin Community College, another one of the Women's Fund's recent education grant partners. In addition to the numerous support services overseen by his department, he is also involved in the newly created Women with Children Emergency Support Fund and holds a master's in education in curriculum and instruction from UT Austin. Steve, I'm delighted to have you be part of this discussion.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it.
And so let's get started. Marisela, I'd like to start with you. I'd love to hear about how Foundation Communities education programs have had to change as a result of COVID-19. Can you talk about how you are continuing to support your residents as they persist and complete their education?
Yes, thank you very much, Jennifer. Definitely, it's been quite a switch, as it has been for, I'm sure, all of in our day-to-day normal work lives. Normally, we are able to provide adult education programming on a daily basis, as well as after school and summer programs for our youth participants. And when COVID hit and schools closed, we definitely had to switch gears within our department to really just try to meet families where they were and meet their needs. So we really switched gears, and our team started supporting our food pantries as we saw increased needs with food, financial assistance, as many residents were losing their jobs or having to stay home because schools were now closed and they didn't have childcare options. So, just trying to figure out those basic needs, feeding families, providing resources, making sure there was roofs over their heads, and just supporting them in any way we could. Additionally, an added element was just how we could support our families with the distance learning. That was very new to many of our families, obviously, and we still saw a lot of challenges just in parents' ability to access the technology. And then also many of our families speak various languages. So just trying to figure out how we could bridge that gap from school to home and have them feel supported and their kids still engaging in education. So that's kind of how we switched gears. We did that by a lot of phone calls home, checking on families, checking on parents, making sure that they knew we were still there to support, maybe in a different way than we had before. Our Prosper Centers definitely were available to help with financial assistance. Foundation Communities provided some emergency assistance for rental needs as well. The Prosper Centers were helping people to make sure that they had their taxes prepared as the stimulus, payments were going out. People needed to make sure they had those. And then, of course, increased food pantries. We served hundreds of people and families over the last couple of months at our food pantries. So we just kind of, switched gears into that. And then summer came about, and we wanted to make sure that we were still serving our students. One of the main goals of our after school and our summer programs are to provide academic support and try to find ways to lessen that achievement gap. A lot of our students are in schools that are struggling in different ways, or don't have some of the resources that middle class students have after school. So we always want to make sure that we're providing that academic support and enrichment activities that they could engage in. So for the first time ever, we switched both our adult education programs and our our summer programs into a virtual platform. We've definitely been seeing some challenges still with that. Again, issues with lack of devices at home, lack of internet, just challenges accessing the technology. but we were really proud to open up our virtual summer program and have 300 students enroll in our program. And we also have an adult education program, which is offering ESL support during this time. And we also have a digital literacy program so that adults can continue to learn even while they're at home. So we're very excited about this. We just started last Monday on the 15th, and we'll be running through the 31st. So it'll be a 7-week program. Not a lot has changed in what we're offering, academic support, enrichment activities, SEL learning, just ways that we can support the students. And it's really exciting to see the students online and engaging with our staff again.
Wow, thank you, Marisela. It's wonderful to get such a good understanding of the experiences that your residents are facing and the myriad ways that you're supporting them. Thank you for that. And that leads me to my question for Dr. Jones to share her perspective from a higher ed standpoint. Dr. Jones, you work at the oldest university in Austin and our only historically Black college or university. Huston-Tillotson has long been the center of Black life in our community, and I'd love to ask you if you could speak for a bit about how the momentum in the Black Lives Matter movement has impacted your students and faculty and how your work has changed in this current environment.
I think the Black Lives Matter movement has impacted our students a whole lot from what I can see. I think all those students know that, you know, we've had racial progress. They do realize that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. That there's so much more that we can do to get us to equitable spaces. They're participating in the marches. I see them on social media. I see them engaging. I have an alum who recently was hired with NAACP, who's kind of working on a voting kind of program, and has kind of asked me to sit in and how can we get more students involved and engaged in the voting process. And so while we as educators know kind of the things that are going on in the world and some of those systemic inequities and all of that, it's sort of hard when they're 18 to 22, right, in that traditional college age. And so this is really opening their eyes and helping them to see that. And I also think that from the aspect of them being in higher education, them trying to obtain their degree, we know that from you know, those who have their degree have a better chance of having a better quality of life. So they're helping out in that regards as well. From a faculty standpoint, I will say I had a faculty member reach out to me. We kind of did a little pre-work of this in the previous academic year, but he wanted to partner with me to kind of create a program that would promote democratic student development and to give them experiential learning. So they would take what they learn in class from a political science perspective and figure out how to make those things practical in areas around Central Texas, Austin, and our local communities to see how they can address. And in doing that, we're helping to kind of shape that democratic view that we really want them to have, get that full perspective of education. It has changed the scope of the work. I mean, I think it was always there to some extent, but it has changed and it's just intensified, I think, the scope of the work for everything that's been going on. So that's where we are now.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jones. As Dean of Student Affairs, it's very clear that you have your finger on the pulse of your student body and their needs and their activities. And it sounds like there are some really incredible things underway. Now, Steve, that brings me to you. Support services are more important now than ever. And so I wondered if you could please talk about the types of support, either remote or health related, financial or otherwise, that Austin Community College provides to ensure student success.
Absolutely. And I want to apologize to all the attendees for wearing my cloak of invisibility. You can't see me. We had major problems getting my webcam to work, but I am here, and thank you for having me participate and for the question. So our students are overrepresented in terms of people who've lost their jobs, their livelihood, all at the same time while they're going to school. And so we have seen a absolute increase in the amount of requests for things like emergency services, things like other support, social support needs for students, food, housing, finances, all those things. Interestingly enough, as we came into this period of time, the college closed down. The college is 11 campuses, all brick and mortar, and we had to quickly rotate from a in-person services to online, which we did. And we didn't drop any of the services that we provide. I would say the biggest increase that we've seen are requests for mental health assistance. This pandemic has created mental health concerns for many of our students, in addition to losing their jobs and possibly losing their housing. Our counselors have been certified to do telecounseling, so that's really been important since we can't really do face-to-face. The other big increase in support is through our emergency aid program that helps students with unanticipated expenses, and we really welcome the partnership with the Austin Community Fund to help fund that part of the program that works primarily with students who are single women. And that is a very vulnerable population. I salute them for being single women. Generally, they're going to be low wage earners, and they're coming back to school to try to make a better life for themselves and their families. And that is a very heavy lift, and we want to do everything we can to support them. We also offer robust childcare support for students. The irony is that most childcare centers closed, and many continue to remain closed. And so our students are scrambling to find childcare, but we do have funds to support them. However, even with the funds we have a waiting list of eligible students, and these are only the very lowest income students that we assist. So we know there's a high need. We assist them with paying for textbooks beyond financial aid. We also, of course, outside of my area, we offer advising services for students, help with registration, basically all the things that a student could access on campus, they can access online. And we have found that these supports are just particularly important at this time, as our students are overrepresented in people who've lost their jobs. They're primarily in the service industry. We heard it within days of restaurants, bars, movie theaters closing down, and our students saying, okay, now what am I going to do? And so we step up as best we can, including with, like I said, our partners with the Austin Community Fund, and do what we can to support our students to complete the spring semester. And now many of them are registered in the summer semester and or looking forward to fall.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for sharing that from a broader perspective around what your students are going through, as well as specifically around the emergency fund that I know provides so much benefit to our community. And I have a last question before we move to Q&A and take some questions from our audience, but I'd love to know from each of you, we've talked about all of these different challenges and how these challenges are impacting the Austin community, and I'd love to hear from each of you, what gives you hope? Who'd like to go first?
I'll start. I think what gives me hope is, everything that I am seeing, the resilience of the students, in light of everything that's going on. This was a huge transition. We had some online classes, but we were never an online school. And I think that the pandemic that we're going through, in addition to what they're learning, what they're engaging in, how they're expanding their thought processes on from the Black Lives Matter movement, there's a lot going on right now. I know, the mental health, I think, is something that is definitely there as well. But I think what gives me hope is seeing that resilience from the students, from how the faculty and staff are responding to students wanting to provide the supports that they need, and that the students are engaging into this work and into the conversation in spite of everything that's going on. So at the end of the day, that's what gives me hope the most.
Yeah, I definitely agree with resiliency. I've seen such resiliency from our residents and our families, and neighbors really looking out for one another and how can they help each other during this time. I've definitely seen such a just really a lot of caring and support from our foundation community staff. I've seen people put themselves out there on the front lines during this time and making sure people are fed and getting the help that they need. And that's just a really beautiful thing, especially with so much craziness going on in the world right now. I think that's just something that's inspired me a whole lot. And then definitely just, I think having our students wanting to still learn, our adult learners saying, hey, when are we going to start programming back up? I really want to get back in there. I want to keep my education going. And of course, seeing the kids eager to still learn and take part in learning over the summer, I think is really hopeful for all of us and for our future generation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the short answer is what Dr. Jones and Marisela said. Yes to all of that, absolutely. In addition, we can look at the current situation as a woe is me. It's all a challenge. It's, oh my gosh, things are so difficult. And that's not to deny that, yes, in fact, they are difficult. They are challenging. But we choose to reframe that and look at the current situation as an opportunity, especially for students who are in community colleges. It's an opportunity for them to reset and really take stock on, where am I in my life? Is this what I want in my life? And where do I want to go in my life? Oh my gosh, everything has seemed to fall apart. I have difficulty paying for my rent. I have difficulty with food. How am I'm on this online world with classes? What am I going to do? And we're really working to help students say, now is the time. Now is really the time to step forward, do what you can to reset your priorities. Everybody is in this situation. You are in a unique situation, and I see that this situation that we're in has actually helped develop community. Whereas, we might walk past each other in the hallway, hi, whatever, see a student. But in this situation, we have to actively reach out to each other, exactly like we're doing now. We're reaching out to each other, where we might be in a room together and like, okay, have lunch and go from there. Now, with the social distancing, we have to create community, and that is what I really find hopeful in all aspects of everything that all of us are doing, that we have these communities that are created that wouldn't necessarily be there before.
Love that. Thank you all so much for sharing your hope and your wisdom and your experience. I feel like we could talk for days, and there is a lot to discuss, but I want to make sure that we have time to address the questions from those who are listening. So Kim, I want to invite you to join us to facilitate the Q&A, and could you share some of the questions that we've been receiving?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I can tell a lot of deep thinking and reflection been has been happening because we've got some great questions. The first is specifically for Dr. Jones. It says ACF funded a women's empowerment conference at HT. Why was that an important opportunity for your students, and what was the impact?
Great question. And thanks so much for that, that donation. We find, I found a couple of years ago that I wanted to do a women's empowerment. Our president buys a couple of tables to the Texas Women's Conference every year. And when I leave that conference, I'm like, I could do anything. Like, it is designed to do exactly what it's supposed to do. So as Dean of Students, I said, this is something that we need on campus for the young ladies. I didn't want to do it alone and kind of in a vacuum. And so I sent an email out to the females on campus, to all the women on campus. And I said, what do you think the young ladies need on campus? Because you interact with them a lot more than I do. And the responses that I got back were just incredible. From stereotype threat, identity issues, just how to love yourself, you know, just dealing with the students, and especially as they were coming in and matriculating through the university. And so I took a lot of those topics, and then I've asked different faculty and staff to present, and I would also get student presenters as well to kind of co-present with them. And what came out was just incredible. But it really, the purpose of that is to empower the young ladies on campus to find their voice, to figure out what career, to learn how to network, to learn how to make contacts. It has been an incredible journey to do that. This was our second one this year, and it has just grown. And we do all kinds of things to try to replicate the bigger one that I go to. And the funds that we received definitely help for us to do that, as we're bringing in different speakers and things of that nature. So I think the young ladies really get, it's a Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, which is pretty hard for college students. So it's been awesome. So I am grateful for that.
That sounds wonderful. That sounds really fantastic. And the next question I have here is specifically for Steve. It's, how can we, the Women's Fund, or individually, help the ACC students currently on the wait list for childcare support?
Wow, what a wonderful question. First of all, the childcare need, especially for students, especially for single women, but also we have families who need childcare too. It seems to be never ending, with the state backing off of support for childcare. Individual institutions, where they can, when they can, try to step up and support our women who have young children. That said, I've worked, part of what I do is try to stitch a number of funding sources together to do one thing. They might be institutional funds, they might be grant funds, they might be donations. There's several different sources that I use to support our students. What the Women's Fund can do is identify and understand the need for college students in general, but community college students specifically, and specifically in Austin. The need is high. Approximately 40% of our student body is considered low income or very low income. And the single women clearly are overrepresented in that group. So what the Women's Fund can do is can partner with Austin Community College. We have a number of different ways to donate funds, or to partner with us to help raise funds specifically for our women who have young children. I can I can connect with you offline to talk about how to do that. There's a couple different ways, and we can develop new and more interesting and different ways. Very briefly, our preferred model are called childcare scholarships, which allow for parent choice. Parent can choose where they want to take their child. We offer them guidance on what kind of things to look for, but we don't dictate in any way, you should go here, you should go there. Remember, we have campuses all the way from Hayes County all the way up to Leander. So we're spread all over the place. One single location doesn't do well, but we are looking to partner with organizations like the Austin Women's Fund and Austin Community Fund.
Wonderful. Thanks, Steve. And then I guess this question is really for everyone and to each organization. What is your greatest current need that can help further the education of your students or clients? Marisela, do you want to go first? I'm going to volunteer you.
Yeah, no problem. I think that I'm still seeing a lot of a gap between, it's, part of the digital divide, lack of technology devices in the home, internet access, and then just understanding of how technology works. We're still seeing a lot of that gap that exists. And so I think going forward, I would love to see, more educational programs that we can do to support the parents, single moms, the families, to get a little bit more ahead, a little bit more up to speed. I think we definitely know that existed, but I think it was highlighted when our students went to distance learning, and now we're going to a distance virtual learning program. It's definitely highlighted that gap. So I know that we're already thinking of ways that we can incorporate that into some more of our adult education supports. And so it's a little tricky. It's a catch-22 a little bit, because you're trying to teach people how to access technology and use technology using technology. So we're still kind of figuring out how to do that best. And then also just teaching those things in the multiple languages that we have. I think one of our communities has about 8 to 10 different languages served just in one community. So it's quite a spectrum of that. And so just that understanding. But I feel like it's very crucial for us to get our working families, our parents, our single moms up to speed with technology, even more so than before, because everything you do now is digital. From applying for a job, applying for benefits, anything that you do is now all virtual. So I feel like that was one thing that was highlighted to me during this time, is not just having programming that can support the education of our kids, but also our families and our parents in that manner.
Absolutely. Yes. Dr. Jones, do you want to talk a little bit about the greatest current need as well?
I would say two things, possibly linked together. I mean, I think one is scholarships. Our decision was finally made. We didn't know how we were going to operate in the fall. And our president released a statement last week that we're going to go fully online, which is bold, and which could have some really some consequences from an enrollment standpoint. The one thing that she did do was say that everybody would get a laptop. So that's like amazing. So it's really helping and getting everybody what they need. But I would say from that perspective, I know that a lot of students, from the scholarship perspective, scholarships always help. We have a high population. I mean, maybe 80–90%. I don't have that exact number with me, that are in need of scholarships to help to pay their tuition bill. And so I know that that's a piece of it. For me personally, I like to tie in leadership development with it. So, you get a $500 scholarship or whatever, any type of scholarship you tie, there's some piece of leadership development that could tie in that really helps them understand where they're going through those seminars of how to connect and prepare for the careers that they're getting ready for. So I do a lot of things in NACE competencies, which is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, with its critical thinking, networking, communication, teamwork, collaboration, all of those things. But if I can tie those things to scholarships, then it becomes a win-win, because then I know the students are really being developed and their financial need is also being met as well.
Scholarships, computer, that's fantastic. And I'm so glad to hear everyone's getting a laptop too. Speaking to Marisela's point, Steve, do you want to also weigh in on that question? What's your greatest current need that can help further the education of your students? I know you've mentioned this some already, but do you want to address that?
Exactly. That's right in my wheelhouse about what our current need is right now. Although childcare certainly is high on the list. The colleges, I'm going to start with the colleges benefited greatly from the CARES Stimulus Act. We did receive millions of dollars for direct assistance to students. And we are burning through that money so fast. And because of the restrictions that the Department of Education has put on the use of those funds, we're finding well up to 50% of our students are not eligible for those funds. So we're dipping into funds in my area to support emergency assistance. While we have 40,000 students, we treat them each individually, and the emergency assistance directs help to students based on individual needs. Primarily, those needs revolve around housing and transportation. I got to fix my car, tire went out kind of thing. I can't pay my rent for next month, those kind of things. Anything that we can do to keep them in school. So our highest need, despite getting the CARES fund, are for what we call emergency assistance for student needs. Shameless plug, if you want to donate to that, we contact our foundation and ask to contribute to the Support Center Student Emergency Fund. Those funds are you're not bound by the criteria that CARES funds are bound by. It is, I gotta say, I read every email and I spend 8 to 10 hours a day reading emails from students who are making requests. And we've tried to keep this thing short and to the point. So I know that our students are hurting out there. I know they have legitimate needs. I know that, we're pulling rabbits out of the hat right now to assist them and keep them in school and keep them going forward. So the highest need for us is the Student Emergency Fund, the Support Center Student Emergency Fund. That will get money directly to students or pay vendors directly that would cause the student to disenroll or drop their classes. Our goal is keep them in, persist, and complete.
Thank you for doing that work. We are so appreciative, because I know that's more important now than ever. You touched on funds and fundraising, and that actually kind of ties us to our next question that we have, which is someone wrote in, I know that Diane Land, wife of our mayor, made a fundraising plea for financial support of Huston-Tillotson in the last week. Are those funds going to a special program or just support of all programs? So, Dr. Jones, I think this question is definitely for you.
Sounds like it. I'm not sure exactly. We do have institutional advancement, is the department that kind of oversees all of the fundraising efforts. And so I'm not exactly sure where that where those program dollars would go, or those fundraising dollars would go. But I know that there, as everybody else has indicated, there is a lot of need that's out there. Because even students that get a laptop, some of them don't have Wi-Fi. And so we have to figure out, or their Wi-Fi is really, really, really not, it's weak. And so those are things that we're having to work through and deal with students as well. And so I'm sure that there is probably a mix of that but for the hands down, I know it would probably be to help support students to really help get through the fall. We don't know what January will look like. We may very well be face-to-face and back on ground and in the residence halls. But I think part of that decision was that we just serve a high population that is really at risk from a health perspective. And so while it was probably a scary decision to make from an enrollment perspective, it really was one that was based in a good decision from a health and to try to try to prevent more of the spread. So, but I am not totally sure. I know it would probably help students though.
I don't doubt it. And we have really time for one last question. And I love that we're able to kind of end our discussion today on how we can help. This question is saying that staying at home right now during the pandemic is hard because many of us give because we want to do something. So what can we do and how can we help? Marisela, you want to kick things off?
Yeah, so so we're asking it what we can do and how we can help from home. Yeah. So I mean, I still think there's a lot of ways that as far as our organization that people can contribute as far as making care calls. We've been doing that a lot to our seniors residents. We have volunteers who are currently creating pre-recorded instruction videos for our kids to watch during our virtual learning program. Writing cards to residents and putting them in our food pantry baskets. I know for myself, I'm very much a doer and I like to help. So I've figured out how I can be more resourceful to my team. And that's a challenge at my age, just learning new platforms of digital learning. And I've spent a lot of time researching and trying to figure out, using Google Classroom and using different platforms. And so I feel like one way I can still contribute to my team is learning and then teaching them and supporting their ongoing learning. And also I feel like being a role model for them. Just because I'm the director of our education department doesn't mean that my learning stops. So I hope that I can be a role model to them and let them know, like, hey, I'm still learning as we go. This is a scary venture. It's different for all of us, but we're going to keep moving forward so our kids and our adult learners have an opportunity to continue to grow even when they're at home.
Anyone else? How can we help? Steve,
Okay, sorry. I would say I am in the process of trying to develop a mentorship program. So, just that aspect of mentorship to students who come from marginalized communities, who may not know how to do things as well, such as networking and things of that nature. Those things are really, really helpful to help push their careers further. And sometimes they hurt themselves by not, diving in and knowing those things. And so I'm looking to really try to build what that mentorship program will look like for the 2021 academic year and try to put something in place for there. So that is always definitely something that just somebody who can give an hour every couple of weeks to talk to a student, if it's virtual, okay, well, what's going on, and to work with students in that regard. And so I'm kind of developing in that skill building set and what I'm looking for, and I think what we're looking for, and so that's definitely another way to be able to help out.
I've already given an unvarnished pitch: support center, student emergency fund through the ACC Foundation. But what I would ask everybody in a broader sense of what can you do when you're home is I am dismayed with how this pandemic is proceeding, and what you can do when you leave home to go shopping for groceries or run little errands. Please wear your mask. Please talk to your community, the people you know. Have a discussion with folks who don't think it's important, because it protects them and it protects others. The sooner we can get this pandemic more under control, that we can return to something akin to normal. But we won't be able to do that until we actually control the infection rate. So that's what I would ask for everybody in the broader sense. That will help all our students when we get back to, are able to get back to campus. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. I want to thank all of our panelists today for such a thoughtful discussion and really just so enlightening. You've given me so much to think about, and I'm sure that this holds true for others who are participating today. But this discussion just, unsurprisingly, but does just affirm my dedication to our work at the Women's Fund and what we're seeking to do. So thank you all so much for being here and for sharing with us today. And on that note, if others would like to get more involved, Kim, could you share some more about the Women's Fund and how folks can get involved if they'd like?
Absolutely, I'd love to. And again, a huge thanks to our panelists, and also Jen, thank you for facilitating today's conversation. For those that would like to learn a little bit more about the Women's Fund and want to get involved, please feel free to be in touch via the contact information below. That's my work email and phone number. I would love to hear from you and tell you more about our upcoming engagement opportunities, which will include, save the date, we're going to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion training. This can serve both as kind of an introductory or continuation of the work we began during the grants review process. So for those of you who joined us in March as part of the grants committee doing that work, we'd love to see you again for that work. But if you're brand new to this or weren't even on the grants committee, know that you are also definitely welcome. We're going to be doing that on July 8th from noon to 1:30, and keep a lookout in your email for an email from the foundation, just because there'll be a link to RSVP and sign up, because we'll be doing that over Zoom. Also, just a reminder in general to check your email and the foundation website for more information on our upcoming program. We really miss meeting as a group and seeing everyone, but we hope we can at least engage and see you all virtually this way over the summer. And again, are so grateful that you were able to join us for today's conversation and for supporting Central Texas Women. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.